Black Ops 6 is here, and while it is another Call of Duty game, it's actually quite different from a lot of the previous titles. There's a lot of small quality of life improvements, there's a lot of new mechanics, and there's just some changes to the way things worked in the settings and in the gameplay that might catch you unaware. So in this guide, I'm going to do a deep dive into everything you need to know to have the best experience playing Black Ops 6. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, but first, a massive thanks to the sponsor of today's video, OBSBOT, with their new Meet 2 camera. This is a 4K AI-powered webcam, and the idea behind it is to have something that is exceptionally high quality, but is also affordable. And, may I add, it's super small as well, so it's really easy to take with you when you're traveling. It comes in 3 different colors. It's a very attractive little camera, as you can see here. And in the box, you get a USB cable. You also get an adapter, so USB-C to A, and you get a little stand. The stand is amazing. I love the OBSBOT stands, where basically the camera's slightly magnetic, and the stand is too, so you can just clip it onto whatever, onto the back of a monitor, or you can just put it on your desk, and then the camera will just plop onto it and stay exactly where you put it, at the right angle and everything. I find that unbelievably useful. All the footage you're seeing right now is being captured by the camera itself, and it works really well in low light conditions too. So if I turn off my key light, now the room that I'm in is actually pretty dark, like the main illumination's coming from my monitor really, but you can see the quality doesn't really suffer, which is awesome. So if you need a webcam, maybe for your streaming, and you want something that's gonna work just no matter what your setup is, you want something that's just gonna be easy to plug in, load up in OBS and have it working, then this is an awesome webcam for you. There is OBSBOT software. They have their own software for the camera, and then it can do some fancy things like the AI autoframe. So if I'm moving around too much, then the camera can actually manage to keep up with me. So if I'm like moving over here, then the camera will be like, hey, you're not in frame, there we go, we're just going to adjust. And then when I go back to it, it will decide exactly where it wants me to be. So you might have seen in my streams, I have a little sort of circular window for my webcam, and I've done some of these streams using this camera. You can see it using there. And sometimes when I'm streaming, I'll do things like, I'll lean back a little bit when I'm watching something, and you can see the camera recognizes that and knows to zoom in a little bit to make sure that I'm framed properly, which is absolutely awesome. It's also capable of doing 4K at 30 frames a second or 1080p at 60 frames a second, and then kind of lots of different settings in between that. So if you want to do it at 4K, 24 frames a second with something a bit more cinematic, you can do that too. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things I really love about this camera, and one of the OBSBOT cameras that I had before, is just how compact it is. This one seems even smaller, and it's so lightweight that you could put it in a bag with your laptop, and it's got that handy little magnetic mount, and it means that this could be your travel webcam. It even has built-in omnidirectional microphones, so you wouldn't need to take a separate microphone. You could just take this, the stand, the USB cable that comes with it, and then you'd basically have a streaming setup ready to go that doesn't take up anywhere near as much space as basically any other webcam that I've used, especially one with this kind of quality. So as I said, a massive thanks to OBSBOT for sponsoring me with their Meet 2 webcam. If you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below. So usually with Call of Duty, I like to play with the default settings as much as possible. But in the Black Ops 6 beta, there's a couple of options that you probably want to change straight away. So if you go to the settings menu and then go to whichever controller input you're using, these options work for both of them. I'll go to controller. If you go over to movement and then to sprint assist, I know there's some people who would prefer to have this on. So what sprint assist does is that instead of having to click in your left stick in order to start sprinting, you can actually just sprint whenever you start moving the stick. So it's like having the auto sprint that you'd have in the previous games. So basically you would immediately, as soon as you start moving, go into that sprint. It does mean that your ADS time would be a little bit longer. You need to think about that sprint to fire time that you have in all of your weapon builds. But if you do choose to put this on, then you also need to press square to go to show more and then change the sprint assist delay to 0. If you don't do that, then you're going to have about half a second from when you start moving before you go into a sprint. And with the new Omni movement, that means all of the things that you'd like to be able to do, like diving and sliding in different directions, won't happen for at least half a second after you start putting the input in, which is obviously not ideal. So if you're going to have sprint assist on, make sure that sprint assist delay is set to 0. I'm going to turn it off because I quite like having a little bit of control about whether I'm sprinting or not. Now, another thing that you want to choose is go back to your settings and then go to graphics, and this time you're going to go to view and make sure you turn your field of view up. Even if you've played other Call of Duty games on your device, for whatever reason, this option won't carry over. It will be set back down to 90, which is the default. That will make the game feel quite slow. It will feel like you're moving very slowly. I've had a few viewers say, how come you're moving so quickly and I move so slow? This is the answer. Just make sure you put this all the way up to the right. I did used to play on 110. I think if you feel a little bit of motion sickness at 120, just turn it down a little bit until it makes you feel okay. But 120 is the maximum, and that will make you feel like you're much faster, and it will give you a bigger field of view so you can see more enemies on the screen, particularly in your kind of peripheral vision at the edge of the screen. When it comes to loadouts for the Black Ops 6 beta, it's a little bit different from previous Call of Duty games. So if we go over to weapons and loadouts, you'll have this unlocked at level 4, I think. Then if I just edit the custom loadout 4, because I haven't been using that one, let's start with the main weapon. Now, it's tempting to just go straight to the Jackal PDW. Lots of people are saying that this is amazing, that everybody loves this gun. I think, yeah, it's fine, it's very, very viable, but most of the guns in this are viable, and your stats aren't going to carry over from the beta, so why not try a few of the other guns? I started with the XM4, which is just the basic assault rifle you start with, so if we just have a look at that, once you've got a few attachments on this, it is very, very good. I really like it. But it does take quite a long while to get attachments. And a big part of that is that leveling your guns takes a long time. This, getting it to level 46, took me about 8 hours, I think, maybe 9 hours. It took a very, very long time to get this fully leveled up. And that was with double XP on. So if there's no double XP, it'll take a very long time. And when it comes to optics, it's pretty much the same as it was before, except when you just level up the XM4, you'll get a load of these kind of reflex sights, but not many ACOG sights. And that's because, a bit like the last couple of games, in order to unlock different sights, different attachments for the guns, you actually need to unlock them on a different gun. So you can see these 4x scopes you need to unlock by using the AMES 85. AMES 85? I don't know how you meant to say that. But anyway, that's how you unlock them. You do get the Willis 3x scope, but that one's quite late. It's quite a late unlock, and it's pretty good. There's a new category called Fire Mods. Now, this has kind of combined things like when you used to have the aftermarket kits and the ammo types. It's kind of smushed them together a little bit, as well as the specialty things that would be on some weapons. So, for the XM4, you've got full metal jacket rounds, which will give you extra damage against score streaks and let you shoot through walls a bit. It feels like you can shoot through nearly everything in this game, so that can be pretty strong. Rapid fire, which I absolutely love, increases the fire rate. Doesn't seem to do so much on the SMGs as far as I can tell. On the assault rifles, it's huge. It makes the XM4 so powerful. It's probably the most important attachment, I think. Recoil springs just gives you a little bit of extra recoil control in both directions, and then the NATO overpressured rounds give you an extra little bit of bullet velocity. Rapid fire is like 100% the way to go on this, as far as I can tell. Right, we'll cut through the rest of it a little bit quicker. So the pistols, it's pretty much the same. You've got pistols and you've got one launcher at the moment, which is lock-on. You can take down helicopters and stuff with it, which is quite useful. The melee, you now have a melee setting. Now, in the beta, you've only got access to a knife. If you've pre-ordered Vault Edition, you've got this weird zombie knife that actually makes enemies explode if you hit them with it, which is pretty cool. But this will always be available. You just hold in the right stick to access it, so you will always have a melee. And if you get your melee weapon out before you melee someone, you actually do a one-hit kill on them, which is obviously pretty powerful. Tacticals, you've got concussions that don't seem to do that much in a beta. Flashbangs are the same as always. Prox alarms are really cool. Prox alarms, you can throw them down and they will beep very loudly and show on the minimap for your entire team if an enemy runs over it. So really useful in things like Domination. If you want to know if someone's like flanking your team, then you can set these up on the flanking routes, and if someone runs past it, you'll get a heads up. So that's super useful. Stims are really powerful as well, give you your health back really quickly. It feels like health regeneration's a little bit slow in this game, so being able to use stims, you get 2 of them if you take them, then you'll get your health back super fast. It doesn't seem like it does too much to kind of boost your running speed, as it says says in the description, it just refreshes your tactical sprint. So if you're using tactical sprint a lot, you can use a stim to keep that going a little bit longer, but it doesn't seem to last all that long. Lethals, you've got frag, semtex, and thermo grenades. They're a bit like Molotovs, but they take a little while to explode. They sort of spread a gas out and then ignite, which takes a little while. Field upgrades, you've got an assault pack, which is ammo. Trophy system, neurogas is like a mine that if people run over it, it makes their screen all weird colors, and it does a little bit of ticking damage. I have got kills with this, but only like 1 or 2 in all the time I've been playing, so it doesn't seem very strong at all. Then the acoustic amp is meant to make enemy footsteps louder. Personally, I haven't had any trouble listening to footsteps in the game, and when I've used this, it doesn't seem to make any difference to me. So I'm not sure if it's bugged right now, or I've heard on console a few people saying that footsteps are way too quiet on PlayStation 5, for example. Maybe this will help, I'm not really sure. Then for your perks, now I'm not going to go through all of the perks too much, but you'll notice they each have different colours. So in each slot, you've got a choice of perks and they've all got different colours. One of the fancy things that's happening with Black Ops 6 that's new is if you take a load of perks from all the same colour, so for example we take Assassin, which basically marks enemies on who are on a kill streak on your minimap, and if you kill them you get a few extra points if you run over their body and pick it up. Then we'll take Gun Ho, which lets you not slow down when you're reloading or using equipment. And we'll take Double Time, which gives you tactical sprint for much longer. Because I've taken all 3 red ones, you'll see the specialty perk is now enabled. The red one, which is Enforcer, which means when you kill enemies, you get a buff. You get a buff to movement speed and health regen. If you take all blue ones, you'll get Recon, which is super powerful. Basically, whenever you spawn, you will see all of the enemies through walls, which is insane. It's basically wall hacks for like the first 2 seconds of your life. It sounds like it wouldn't be that useful because it's just when you spawn, but because the maps are so small, normally it gives you an idea of anyone who's anywhere near you, you can immediately predict where they're about to be. And then the green one lets you get extra score for objectives and destroying enemy content. So that can be super useful, and we'll talk about why. But getting extra score in this is pretty huge. And in the green ones, actually, there's also some like Dispatcher, which will also reduce the score for non-lethal score streaks, so things like the UAV, which is kind of interesting. Then there's a wild card. You can pick Overkill, which lets you have 2 primary weapons, or you can have Perk Greed if you want, which gives you an extra perk. So you could take all of those sort of like green ones I was saying, for example. Let's just change that for a second. If I picked Flak Jacket, and then I picked Dispatcher, which, like I said, reduces what you need for kill streaks, and then I picked, I don't know, Guardian, and then because I've got Perk Greed, I can pick an extra one, and I picked Bankroll, that also gives you 150 extra score towards your score streaks. So not only will the things like UAVs be cheaper, but you start with 150 in each life. And because of Strategist, you're getting extra score, so then when you go to the score streaks, which is the other part of your loadout, you can see how much of an effect I'll have. 150 towards, say, a UAV means instead of 675 points, you now only need 500 points, and because with Bankroll you start with 150, you now only need 350 points to get it, so you need basically half the number of points to get a UAV, and you get extra points from all different things because of the green perk. Now, it's important to note, these are score streaks, not kill streaks, so you do get points from playing the objective. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Now, for the next section, we're going to talk about the in-game HUD and how you can edit it. Now, while you can do it in the menu, you can go to Interface and then go to Gameplay HUD, and then you'll be able to see there's a few different options there. Some of the options won't appear unless you're in-game. So, you obviously don't want to do that in a live game, that would be a nightmare, but you can go into the training course, and then that will load up the tutorial again, which will let you edit the HUD while you're inside this mode. So once you get into the training mode, you don't need to worry about actually doing any of the objectives or anything like that. Although, if you haven't done the tutorial, I think it's really good. I strongly suggest it. Anyway, now you can go over to Interface in the settings and go to Gameplay HUD, and you'll basically have a few extra settings that you wouldn't have before. Now, there's a few things that most people, I would say, probably change. One of them is changing your minimap from round to square, just because it gives you an extra little bit of area. It basically gives you a bigger minimap. Which is obviously kind of useful. You can choose whether you want your minimap to rotate or not. I know most people would have that on. I do understand why some people like to not have it on if you want to be able to say things like, oh, the enemy's to the east, to the west, to the north, to the south. It's a little bit easier if you don't have minimap rotation on, but that's obviously up to you. Then there's a couple of other things here with the compass. I think by default, for me at least, the compass was attached to the minimap, which is a little bit strange. So if you're trying to call out a bearing, like saying, oh, enemies coming from 200, it's kind of hard because you have to kind of look at the minimap, then look at the top of the minimap, and it's very small. If you change that to what they call horizontal, then it will give you the default one that you can see is just at the top, which most people are probably used to with Warzone. Now, there is an absolute ton of different options here. There's so many different things you can choose. You can change how player names appear. You can choose if you get text chat appearing when you're in game. That's in this section now. You can choose whether you get hit markers show up. And then you can also go to the HUD presets and change a few things like this. So you can change if you want the minimap to go over to the other side instead of being on the left, you can make it on the right. Do bear in mind if you change it to another preset, you'll then have to go change the minimap back to square, change the compass back to the top, etc. You can have the classic one, which basically just sets your tacticals and lethals down in the middle of the screen at the bottom. You can have mission interface, which just seems to make it square. It's a bit like standard really, but then I think this is pretty much how Warzone was originally, and you've got the compass at the top. You can have Scout, which puts the minimap at the bottom left, so I think that just gives you a bit more visibility in the top part of the screen so nothing's covered up, although how often do you miss an enemy behind because they're behind the minimap? I think that's pretty rare. Target Tracker, which I really like, where basically it puts the minimap and the compass at the bottom of your screen, kind of in line with your crosshairs. So if you're the sort of person who maybe forgets to look up in the top left for your minimap, this will make it a little bit more obvious to you, which I quite like. You can have Central Command. Oh, Target Tracker, by the way, does it as like a radar effect over the minimap. I think it's fine to turn that off or on, it's up to you. Central Command puts everything near the middle of your screen, so you can see there the ammo count, your field equipment, and your lethal and tactical, and the minimap are all in the kind of center part. I think that could be quite good, actually. That could be something that a lot of people end up using, because it means you don't have to look around your screen. Especially if you're playing on like a really big TV, that might be really useful. And you can have magnified, which actually makes your minimap really big. And it makes everything else really big on magnified. But just in standard, oh, and you can change all the colors if you want to. I know lots of people like to change the red to like pink to make it stand out a little bit more. You can obviously do that if you want. You can also put different filters on if you'd like to do that, to sort of change the intensity of things. So if you go to minimap, you can change the shape of it, so you can have a round one or a square one. You can change the compass type, so like I said, whether you want it on the top or above your minimap, or just turn it off if you never use it. Minimap rotation, on or off. The radar effect, I feel like it's just an effect where it looks like this to show you exactly where enemies are, but then you can't see the map, which, I don't know, it's up to you whether you want that. For some reason, I quite liked playing it on. I didn't feel I needed this, but that probably gives you more information, so up to you. This is really cool. You can make the minimap much bigger. So by turning up to 125, your minimap's just more obvious now. Obviously, it covers up a bit more of the screen, but again, when's the last time you had someone covered up by your minimap? So that might be good, just making the minimap a little bit easier to read. And you can also choose whether you want players or objectives on there. You can choose the icon scale, so that's like player icons, how big they'll appear on there. And you can lower the opacity if you want. So if you want to be able to see through it, if I show you there, you can see the minimap is a lot less opaque, so you can kind of see through it a little bit better. I probably wouldn't play like that personally, but it's nice that you've got lots and lots of different options. So I'd like to have the opacity at 100, have the scale all the way up to 125, and then I'd probably keep the radar off and keep it like that. So it's square, the minimap rotation's on. I think that all looks pretty good. Now, I would say one problem with this is that sometimes when you then go back, it doesn't immediately save. So what you need to do is go back, then press apply, and then when you back out, it should all work, and you can see I've got the big, mostly opaque minimap. It's huge, it's square, but I can still see everything that I need to when I'm running around in the game. Now for the next topic, let's talk about something a little bit controversial, and aim assist. So this is something that's obviously splits the COD community quite a lot. I find the conversation about it quite boring usually, But it is worth noting that it's changed in Black Ops 6. Aim assist is definitely quite different, particularly rotational aim assist. It works in a different way. So what you can see me doing here, I am aiming a little bit there, but if I stop touching the right stick and walk past at a distance, you can see, look, that's without me touching the right stick at all. You see how much I started moving. So as long as I'm a little way away, as long as I'm not touching the right stick there, it is actually rotating me a little bit. That's pretty much as it was in the previous Warzone. It's not enough to stick with someone who's moving quickly, but it will help you out a little bit, sort of keep you on target. And there's the usual kind of slowdown. When you're ADSing, you can see it slows down a little bit. So it's quite fast all the way across there. And then as you get to the target, it slows down. Now, the interesting thing is, if you get within 5 feet of the enemy, and then you start moving past them without touching the right stick, there is absolutely no rotational aim assist. So when you're in those really close quarter gunfights, there is nothing. I'm not touching the right stick here at all, and I'm not moving at all when I'm close to them. And you can see I can move a little bit further back. Still absolutely no rotational aim assist. So what this means is, if you're sliding at someone from a distance, you'll still get a little bit of rotational aim assist. If you're doing things like all the Omni movement tricks, so you're sort of diving, you'll still get a little bit. But if you slide right at someone, you'll just slide straight past them. It's not going to make it so you can like dive at an enemy and then rotate, have the aim assist do the rotation for you. It's not going to do that. You need to turn yourself if you're within about 5 feet of the opponent. But if you're a long way away, then you can see there when I dive, there's still a little bit of aim assist keeping me a little bit closer to them. It's not going to keep you locked on, especially with a real enemy that's moving around, but it's going to help a little bit. Now, the next point might seem super obvious to you, but you know some people need to hear this. Play the objective. In Black Ops games, it's even more important. You can see here that when I get kills, I'm getting 100 points. But just for standing on the objective, on the hard point, I'm getting an extra 50 points every 5 seconds. That means every 10 seconds that I'm playing the objective, I'm actually getting the equivalent of getting an extra kill. And this counts towards your score streak. So you can see there, I got a UAV super quickly, only getting a couple of kills, but actually playing on the hard point. It's unbelievably important in this game. You want to be getting UAVs as much as possible. On the outdoor maps, you want to be getting support choppers up in the air for as much of the game as you possibly can. It makes a huge difference to your team. Now, I love this. I love the fact that they're incentivizing playing the objective, but I still see a bunch of people running around just trying to get kills and actually ending up on way less kills than I do when I'm playing the objective, because I'm also getting all of these score streaks. So please play the objective. Also, if you find someone AFK, it's basically a requirement that you go and take them hostage. Now, my final tip isn't really something new, but it's just a bit more important in Black Ops 6, and this is particularly for the Domination game mode, which a lot of people play because the games go on for quite a long while. It's easy to get a bunch of kills, to grind out camos, etc. When you're playing Domination, in general, you only want to capture 2 objectives. So ideally, you want the central objective, B, and then either A or C. On this map, Derelict, it's a little bit easier to hold A and B because it's easier to get from A to B and then hold it when you need to respawn when you die. But if someone runs around and goes and captures C, immediately all of the enemies are going to be spawning all over the place. People will be spawning behind you, people will be spawning closer to B. It becomes a nightmare. If you just hold A and B, then all of the enemies are only going to be coming from C. So why is this important in Black Ops 6? Well, Black Ops 6, the developers have said, only has 3 lane maps, and I'm assuming that's going to be the plan for the DLC too. They're really focusing on the idea of 3 lane maps, and 3 lane maps mean that you have 3 kind of long routes between A and C, and usually B will be in the middle lane. There's a couple of maps that feel a little bit different to that, like Rewind. There's kind of almost 4 lanes because you could go down the road as well if you've got a bit of a death wish, but generally B will be in the middle lane. And if you control A and B, your team can kind of split up to watch each of the different lanes. That's very different to a map that's kind of more of a big wide open square or circle where enemies could be coming from any direction. Domination is really just about holding these lanes. So for example, in this map Derelict that you're seeing now, you know that there's 3 ways enemies can get from C towards B or A. They can come around the rocks on the left-hand side. There's that kind of rock alleyway, which is quite easy to lock down. You really just need like 1 player guarding that. And then they've got the mess of trains in the middle. That's probably the most difficult route and where most of the enemies will try to come through. They can come along the top of the trains or down the side, so you'll have 2 or 3 people watching that side. And then on the right hand side, you've got that little yard and the building from C that goes through to what we call gate. And then there's a gate, which is another choke point you can hold. So instead of having to watch loads and loads of different angles, you've just really got 3 angles to hold. That's it. It makes the game so much easier, especially obviously if you're in a team that can communicate and coordinate. But whatever you do when you're playing Domination, only go for the back cap, only go to capture their objective, C or A, whichever one it is. If your team is so far behind, you're definitely going to lose. Anyway, I hope these tips helped you. I hope you had a lot of fun. Oh, by the way, when you're in the winner circle, if you press left on the D-pad, then left again, you can do emotes. You should always do that. It's a lot of fun. But if you found these useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you've got any other tips for Black Ops 6. And also, don't forget to check out our sponsor, the OBSBOT Meet 2 4K AI-powered webcam. The link is in the description below.